Security breach in Sector 7. The human left 3 Crixall juveniles unsupervised with her personal data device. Commander Zillax's secondary hearts seized. He stared at the alert flashing across his terminal, each word more catastrophic than the last. Crixall juveniles, unsupervised, with human technology. Containment status? He barked into the comm. Negative, sir. His security chief's voice crackled with barely suppressed panic. The human, Martinez. She disabled the electromagnetic barriers 20 minutes ago. The juveniles have unrestricted access to the observation room. 20 minutes. Gods of the Void. 20 minutes. Mobilize emergency response. Full biocontainment gear. Where is Martinez? Unknown, Commander. She left her station without authorization. Her comm badge is in the break room. Zillax was already moving, his 4 legs carrying him toward the xenopediatric wing at a pace that sent junior officers scrambling out of his path. Crixall juveniles were classified as Class 9 biothreats for a reason. Their species had conquered 47 star systems before achieving spaceflight, apex predators whose young could tear through reinforced durasteel by their 3rd week of life. The 3 in his station's care were offspring of the Crixall ambassador, a diplomatic gesture that had required 16 months of negotiation and enough legal protocols to fill a cargo bay. And now a human had left them alone with her personal belongings. Sir, the parents are inbound, his second-in-command reported, antennae quivering with stress. ETA 12 minutes. They're demanding immediate visual confirmation of their offspring's safety. Stall them. Zillax rounded the corner into the xenopediatric sector, where a full response team was already assembling outside the observation room. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he could see. He stopped. The 3 Crixall cubs, each the size of a full-grown Terran wolf covered in obsidian scales that could deflect pulse rifle fire, were curled together in the center of the room. Their 6-limbed bodies were relaxed, their razor-tipped tails wrapped around each other. Their nictitating membranes were closed. They were sleeping. Impossible, breathed Dr. Vexia, the station's xenopediatric specialist. Her chromatophores flickered through a cascade of confused colors. Crixall juveniles don't enter REM sleep cycles outside their den worlds. Their neurology doesn't permit it. Hypervigilance is hardwired from the moment they hatch. Scan them, Zillax ordered. Already running, sir. Stress hormones are... Commander, their cortisol analogs are at levels we've never recorded. They're in deep sleep, actual restorative sleep. Zillax's gaze moved past the sleeping cubs to the item lying open beside them. A primitive paper notebook, its pages covered in handwritten human script and crude drawings. Martinez's personal journal, left within reach of claws that could shred it to confetti in, like, seconds. What did she do? He whispered. The emergency alert escalated. The Crixall parents had arrived early. Pull the security footage, Zillax commanded. Last 30 minutes. I want to see exactly what happened. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Martinez entering the observation room 23 minutes ago. She carried a container of that earth-stimulant beverage she was always drinking and her worn notebook tucked under one arm. The 3 Crixall cubs, designated K7, K9, and K11 in official reports, had been pacing the perimeter, their movements the characteristic threat assessment patterns of juvenile apex predators. Standard agitation behavior, Dr. Vexia noted. They'd been cycling through territorial displays for the previous 2 hours. We were considering chemical sedation. On screen, Martinez set down her coffee and opened her notebook. Then she did something that made every xenobiologist in the room inhale sharply. She sat down on the floor, not on a chair, not behind a protective barrier. On the floor, cross-legged, in the center of the room, placing herself at perfect striking height for the cubs. Regulation violation, someone muttered. Humans are required to maintain elevated positions in proximity to Class 9 biothreats. Martinez seemed entirely unconcerned with regulations. She flipped through her notebook until she found a page, then held it up toward the nearest cub, K7, the female. "Hey, sweetie, want to see what I drew today?" "She's talking to them?" Zilax's third eye narrowed. "In casual human speech?" "The translator should render it as dominance assertions," Vexia said. But her chromatophores flickered uncertain yellow. That's how Crixall juveniles would interpret soothing tones. On screen, K7 approached cautiously, head low, all 6 legs tense. Her tail blade hovered at strike position. Martinez didn't move, just kept holding up the notebook. The cub's eyes, all 4 of them, focused on the page. "What is she showing them?" Zilax demanded. A technician zoomed the image. The page contained crude sketches. Martinez was no artist, but the subjects were clear. Earth animals, a lion pride sleeping together, wolf cubs playing, a mother bear with offspring. "Predators," Vexia whispered. "She's showing them Earth predators, with their young." K7's posture changed. The aggressive tension bled out of her stance. She moved closer, her snout nearly touching the page. Martinez turned to another page. More drawings. These showed Crixall adults. Zilax recognized the ambassador's distinctive scale patterns. The sketches depicted family groups, den structures, hunting parties working together. Pause there. Vexia leaned forward. "How does she have detailed knowledge of Crixall den behavior? That information is restricted for diplomatic reasons." "Resume playback," Zilax ordered. Martinez continued flipping pages, speaking in that soft, absurd tone. K9 and K11 had abandoned their patrol patterns and were approaching. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were clustered around the human, their heads tilted to view the notebook. Then Martinez did something that stopped every heart in the observation bay. She reached out and touched K7's head. "No," someone gasped. "She'll lose the hand." But K7 didn't strike. The cub leaned into the touch, a low rumble emanating from her chest. Not a threat growl, but something else entirely. "Is that?" Zilax couldn't finish the sentence. "Purring," Vexia said faintly. "She's purring." Crixall juveniles don't purr. They don't have the neurological capacity for contentment responses. On screen, Martinez pulled something from her bag, a thermal blanket standard to all station personnel. She spread it on the floor, then gently, impossibly gently, guided the 3 cubs onto it. They didn't resist. They moved where she directed them, curling against each other. Station protocols mandate immediate separation of juvenile Crixall to prevent dominance combat, a xenopediatric specialist said, voice shaking. She's actively encouraging pack bonding behaviors. Martinez tucked the blanket around them, still talking in that soft voice. She placed her open notebook beside them, within easy reach of their claws. Then she dimmed the lights manually, another protocol violation, and simply walked out. The cubs watched her go. Then, one by one, their nictitating membranes slid closed. The timestamp showed they'd been asleep within 4 minutes. Biologically impossible, Vexia stated. Their stress hormones should be spiking. Instead, she checked her readouts. They're at levels consistent with Crixall adults in their ancestral dens. Complete safety response. A commotion at the observation window drew Zilax's attention. The Crixall parents, Ambassador Talana and her mate Dirax stood frozen, all four eyes locked on their sleeping offspring. Talana's translator stuttered. This cannot, our children do not. Dirax's claws extended involuntarily, scraping against the transparent aluminum. Not in aggression, in shock. How? Talana turned to Zilax. How did you achieve this? We didn't. Zilax gestured helplessly at the sleeping cubs. The human did. Emma Martinez rounded the corner holding a fresh cup of coffee, humming something off-key, and nearly walked into the business end of 6 plasma rifles. Whoa! She jerked back, coffee sloshing. What's going on? Is there a hull breach or... Martinez. Commander Zilax's voice could have frozen hydrogen. Where have you been? Break room? I needed more coffee and... She noticed the assembled emergency response team, the biohazard suits, the Cricksol parents standing rigid by the observation window. Oh no. Did something happen to the cubs? You tell me. Zilax gestured sharply at the viewport. You left 3 Class 9 biothreats unsupervised with unrestricted access to your personal effects. You disabled containment protocols. You violated 17 separate safety regulations. You abandoned your post during active observation hours. Emma blinked at him and then peered through the window at the sleeping cubs. Her face broke into a warm smile. Oh good, they're still asleep. I was worried they'd wake up before I got back. Still asleep? Vexia's chromatophores flashed incredulous purple. You intended this? Well, yeah. Emma sipped her coffee. They were tired, so I let them nap. What's the emergency? Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Zilax felt his third eye beginning to twitch. You let them nap. Uh-huh. Emma looked genuinely confused by the response team. Is that a problem? Martinez, you left classified materials within reach of... Security breach? Emma laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bright and utterly unconcerned. Commander, I left them my sketchbook so they'd have something familiar when they woke up. It's just drawings. Just drawings, Zilax repeated flatly. I've been drawing pictures of their parents all week. Look. Emma stepped past the armed guards, who were too stunned to stop her, and pulled up images on her datapad. See? I sketched Talana and Dirax from the diplomatic photos. The cubs like looking at them before bedtime. Helps them feel connected. Ambassador Talana made a sound no translator could properly render. Before bedtime, Vexia said slowly. You have a bedtime routine. For Cricksol juveniles. Of course. Emma scrolled through more sketches. You can't just expect babies to sleep without a routine. They were so stressed being separated all day, kept pacing and making those anxious chirping sounds. So I started letting them cuddle together during quiet time. Cuddle. Dirax's claws scraped the viewport again. You use this word. Explain. You know snuggle? Physical comfort? Emma demonstrated with her hands. They're babies. Babies need to feel safe to sleep. Cricksol young do not experience comfort or safety. A xenopediatric specialist interjected, mandibles clicking rapidly. They experience territory assessment and threat calculation. Their neural architecture doesn't support emotional states until third molt at minimum. Emma gave him a look that could only be described as politely skeptical. Have you tried asking them? They're pre-verbal. They communicate just fine. Emma pulled out her worn notebook. Somehow she'd retrieved it from the room without anyone noticing, and flipped it open. K7 gets scared during station maintenance because the sounds remind her of something. She hides in the corner and won't eat. K9 doesn't like being touched on his left side. I think he's got a sore spot there. Maybe check for injury? And K11 is curious about everything but needs encouragement. She hangs back unless you show her it's safe first. She turned the notebook toward them. Pages upon pages of handwritten notes, detailed observations, crude but careful sketches. Each cub had entire sections dedicated to their behaviors, preferences, responses. You've been tracking their emotional states, Vexia said faintly. Individual personalities. Well, yeah. They're different kids with different needs. Emma flipped to another page covered in sketches of the cubs in various moods. Happy, frightened, curious, playful. See, K7 does this thing with her tail when she's content. K9 chirps differently when he wants attention versus when he's warning you off. And K11. This concept does not exist in Cricksall pediatric literature, the specialist interrupted. Juveniles are not recognized as individuals until post-molt maturation. That's... Emma paused, visibly struggling for words. That's really sad, actually. They're people. Little people, but people. Talana moved closer to the window, staring at her sleeping offspring. The human treats them as she would human children. Because they are children, Emma said simply. Just, scalier. And it's working, Vexia whispered, her chromatophores shifting through colors that indicated complete paradigm breakdown. By every biological metric we have, it's working. Zillax forced himself to focus. Explain your exact procedures, Martinez. The Cricksall parents deserve to understand what you've done to their offspring. Done to them? Emma looked offended. I just gave them a bedtime routine. Story time with the drawings. Helps them think about family and safe spaces. Dimmed lights because bright light keeps babies awake. Let them sleep together because physical closeness is comforting. Left familiar items nearby so they don't wake up scared. She shrugged. Basic childcare. You created a den environment, Dirac said quietly. You recreated our homeworld sleeping conditions, without ever visiting Cricksall Prime. Emma smiled. I just did what works with scared kids, Ambassador. Turns out kids are kids, no matter what planet they're from. Talana pressed one clawed hand against the viewport, her 4 eyes never leaving her sleeping offspring. When she spoke, her translator barely managed to convey the emotion beneath the words. How did you know what our cubs needed? Emma tilted her head, considering. I didn't, really. They seemed scared. So I did what works with scared kids. She opened her notebook to a page filled with sketches of K7. See? This is her happy face. See how her crest relaxes? And this is when she's frightened. The crest flattens completely. This one's when she's curious about something. She flipped through more pages, each one documenting subtle differences in posture, scale patterns, eye positioning. K9 is braver than his sisters, but he's also more sensitive to criticism. If you correct him too harshly, he shuts down for hours. K11 is the observer. She needs to watch something 3 or 4 times before she'll try it herself. But once she commits, she's all in. Talana's translator emitted a sound like breaking glass. Individual personalities. Of course. Emma looked confused again. They're as different as any 3 kids would be. Cricksall do not recognize individual differentiation in juveniles until 3rd molt, Vexia explained softly. They are categorized by birth order and physical metrics. The concept of juvenile personality is not part of our understanding. But they're right there. Emma gestured at the sleeping cubs. You can see how different they are. K7 is protective of her siblings. K9 wants to make everyone proud. K11 just wants to understand how everything works. She smiled. They've been telling me who they are since day 1, You just have to pay attention. Drax made a low, rumbling sound. You have treated our offspring as individuals for weeks? Since I started working with them, yeah. Emma flipped backward in the notebook. I've been reading them stories too. Earth stories about families, about protection, about belonging. They love the one about the wolf pack. I think they relate to it. You violated 17 separate safety protocols, Commander Zillax said, but his voice had lost its sharp edge. Some of them carrying criminal penalties. Emma met his gaze steadily. They were crying, Commander. Her voice was quiet but firm. Would you leave crying babies alone in separate rooms because of protocols? Would you let children suffer because some regulation says you have to? They are classified as Class 9 biothreats. They're babies. Emma's eyes flashed. Babies who miss their parents and don't understand why they're in a strange place with strange people and why everything is so scary all the time. Protocols don't change that. A soft chirping sound interrupted the conversation. K-11 was stirring, her nictitating membranes sliding open. Within seconds, all 3 cubs were waking, their heads lifting in synchronized confusion. Then K-7 spotted Emma through the viewport. The cub's entire body language changed, her crest raised in what Emma's notes identified as joy recognition. She chirped urgently, and her siblings immediately oriented toward the window as well. They're seeking the human, Vexia breathed, not their parents, the human. K9 was already at the door, pawing at the panel. All 3 cubs were vocalizing, not threat calls, but something else entirely. Plaintive, seeking. That's impossible, the xenopediatric specialist whispered. Pre-molt Crixol don't form selective attachments. They don't bond. But the cubs were clearly bonded, and they wanted Emma. Talana's hand trembled against the viewport. My children display affection. For a human, her voice cracked. This behavior is not documented until post-maturity bonding rituals. They should not be capable. Permission to enter? Emma asked, already moving toward the door. Zillax nodded mutely. The moment the door opened, 3 Crixol cubs, each capable of severing limbs with casual swipes, rushed to Emma with all the coordination of excited puppies. They pressed against her, chirping and trilling, their tails wrapping gently around her legs. Emma laughed and sat down, letting them climb partially into her lap. Hey, babies. Did you have a good nap? She stroked K7's crest, scratched behind K9's ear ridges, let K11 nuzzle her shoulder. The cubs rumbled with contentment. Through the viewport, Talana made a sound no one had ever heard from a Crixol before. Something between a sob and a laugh. Oh, Emma suddenly remembered. Ambassador, I meant to show you earlier. She retrieved her notebook from where it had fallen, carefully maneuvering around the cubs. I've been drawing pictures of Crixol Prime for them. Want to see? She held up the notebook. The pages were filled with detailed sketches. Den structures built into crystalline cliff faces, family groups hunting together. The distinctive double sun formation of the Crixol home system. Adult Crixol teaching juveniles protective formations, communal sleeping arrangements. I researched your culture in the database, Emma explained. Figured they should know where they come from, you know. Their heritage. I tell them stories about their homeworld before bedtime. Talana stared at the sketches, crude but careful, filled with obvious affection and respect. You have built cultural connection, through art, through stories, through love. Emma corrected gently. I just wanted them to know they're safe and valued and connected to something bigger than themselves. She smiled as K11 tried to eat the corner of the notebook. Hey, no. That's not food, sweetie. Durax turned to Zilax. This human. She will continue as primary caregiver? It wasn't a question. Then it is decided. Talana straightened to her full height, every inch the ambassador. Martinez will continue as primary caregiver to our offspring. We formally request her assignment for the duration of our diplomatic posting. Agreed, Durax added. We will compensate appropriately. Emma looked up from where K9 was trying to steal her coffee. Wait, what? Commander Zilax felt the last of his objections crumble under the weight of 3 sleeping then wakeful Crixall cubs displaying genuine affection. Station protocols will need complete revision. We can't have safety regulations that prevent this. He gestured at the scene before them. I'll begin drafting new parameters immediately, Vexia said, her chromatophores settling into determined orange. Humans clearly require different supervision protocols in xenopediatric contexts. Not different protocols, Zilax corrected. Human intuition override. When human caregivers determine that standard safety protocols conflict with juvenile welfare, they are authorized to violate those protocols at their discretion. He paused. We will trust their judgment. The assembled xenobiologists looked shocked. Vexia looked illuminated. Martinez's methods should become required training for all xenopediatric staff, she announced. Every species we care for could benefit from this approach. I want that notebook for the Galactic Pediatric Archives. Emma laughed, the sound making all 3 cubs' crests perk up. It's just doodles and notes about bedtime routines. I'm not even a good artist. You've documented emotional care protocols for a species we classified as incapable of pre-molt emotion, Vexia said quietly. You've proven that our fundamental understanding of juvenile development was incomplete. That notebook represents a paradigm shift in xenopediatric care. I'll make you a copy, Emma offered, gently extracting her coffee from K9's curious claws. The original stays with the kids, though. They like looking at the pictures. Over the next hour, as diplomatic arrangements were finalized, word spread through the station. By the time Zilax returned to his office, he had 17 requests from various species ambassadors, all asking if human caregivers might be available for their offspring. He looked at the emergency report still open on his terminal. With deliberate keystrokes, he deleted security breach and began typing his assessment. Human designation, Emma Martinez. Profession, xenopediatric specialist. Threat level, extreme, but not in conventional terms. Subject demonstrates dangerous capacity for cross-species nurturing that overrides biological imperatives and established behavioral boundaries. Recommend all human childcare personnel be granted expanded operational latitude. They see children where we see threats, individuals where we see categories, and possibilities where we see limitations. Human assessment revision. Dangerous not through strength, but through impossible capacity for nurturing across species barriers. Handle with appropriate caution and respect. He saved the report and returned to the observation window. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, her notebook open between her and the cubs. K7 had a stylus clutched awkwardly in her claws, attempting to mimic Emma's drawing motions. K9 watched intently, his head tilted in concentration. K11 had given up on art and was dozing against Emma's side, her breathing slow and peaceful. Okay, that's pretty good, K7, Emma encouraged. See? You're a natural. Now, who wants to hear about Earth naptime snacks? Because I think we've earned some cookies after all this excitement. The cubs chirped enthusiastically. Even K11 opened one eye. Cookies aren't approved for Crixal juvenile dietary. Someone started to object. Zillax held up one hand. Human intuition override. If Martinez believes they can have cookies, they can have cookies. Through the viewport, he watched as the galaxy's most feared apex predator cubs, creatures that should have been incapable of trust, affection, or peaceful sleep, curled contentedly around a human who weighed less than any one of them. Emma's notebook lay open between them, pages covered in simple sketches that somehow captured more truth about care and connection than 1,000 technical manuals. K7 carefully added another line to her drawing, a crude representation of Emma, surrounded by 3 cub-shaped figures. She chirped proudly. "That's beautiful, sweetie," Emma said, and meant it. "Should we add it to our collection?" As she turned the notebook page, Zillax caught a glimpse of the accumulated artwork. Weeks of observation, documentation, and love, rendered in pencil and ink. Every page a testament to a simple truth his species had somehow forgotten. Children were children, no matter their biology. And they needed someone who could see past the claws and scales and protocols to the scared, hopeful, curious beings underneath. The galaxy's protocols would change. Training programs would be rewritten. Entire fields of study would shift to accommodate this new understanding. All because Emma Martinez had looked at 3 Class 9 bio-threats and seen babies who needed a bedtime story. As the cubs dozed against her once more, Emma picked up her stylus and began sketching again. This time, all 4 of them together, a family portrait that defied every regulation and biological assumption the galaxy had ever made. And in the peaceful silence of that moment, the universe quietly rewrote its rules.